Hi guys, today I'm coming at you with a little review. Reese Witherspoon and Kerry Washington's Hulu series, Little Fires Everywhere. I had read this about a year ago and I was super excited to hear that they were making it into a series. There were lots of parts of this series that were really, really emotional, but in a good way. Like, I think it's really good to tap into some of this and to really force yourself to think about it. And it's not stuff, it's not always really well done or it's not always done in a way that's giving it justice as far as the complexity and the depth of these issues. So highly recommend it. Little Fires Everywhere. I think Kerry Washington and Reese Witherspoon were brilliant in it. And for someone who loves Reese Witherspoon, her character, she portrayed it in a way that made me hate her to her very core. So that's good acting. But anyway, I thought I would share this kind of series. It's kind of a recommendation. And I'll probably do more of this kind of stuff because I'm always, I read a ton. I'm an avid reader and, honestly, we watch a fair amount of TV when we can. So this was a mainstream series for sure. These are A-list actors and actresses, and I think it's really good that they're touching on these types of topics because it's highly overlooked in the media. I think that the Asian American perspective is under acknowledged. I really like Reese Witherspoon and Kerry Washington as independent actresses. I think they're both really good celebrity role models. Even if you don't care for them as actresses, I think it's definitely worth watching, especially if you have any ties to the adoption community. So either being an adoptee yourself, I know for me it definitely raised a lot of thoughts and emotions, and it was really intense, and I think it was it was so good. I highly recommend it, especially also as an adoptive parent. That's we'll get into it, but anyway, I definitely recommend it. Here's the plot. Little Fires Everywhere, based in the 90s, a small affluent town called Shaker Heights. Reese Witherspoon's character, Elena, is married to, her husband is Tom, who's played by Joshua Jackson. They have 4 children. The pressure to be perfect was always pressing, was always brewing. Elena cared deeply about the family's image and how they appeared to the community and how they, how others viewed them. Everything, from their perfectly decorated little mini mansion to them even sending out the perfect Christmas cards, with the perfect family photo on it. All of it was so deeply woven into the storyline. It all so beautifully captured the essence of the story they were trying to tell. And Elena befriends this Mia, her name's Mia Warren, and that's Kerry Washington's character. And she has a teenage daughter, Pearl, and they were new to Shaker Heights. They were kind of always on the move, moving around to lots of different places. Mia was an artist. We have these 2 women, Kerry Washington and Reese Witherspoon, white and black, and they're leading these 2 very different lives. And they have very different backgrounds. They are both touched by this one adoption case, right? So Elena's girlfriend, also a white female, has this adopted baby, and the baby is Chinese, and she's about to turn 1 year old. And Mia's over there helping, wrap the party favors and prep for the party because it's this 1 year old's party. And in the book, she's like, well, it's a big deal. It seems like this is almost like a wedding, right? And obviously, they have money, so it was a big to do. And it turns out because this couple they had struggled with infertility for so long that they were overjoyed to have this baby girl, and who was Chinese, was left on the doorstep of a fire department. So Mia works part-time at a local Chinese restaurant, and she befriends one of the workers there, Bibi Chow. And let me just, so really quick, so Bibi Chow, even watching this was super triggering for me because growing up, she was not her, but Asians like her, so broken English, clearly did not fit in. I was very sensitive to Asians like her, true Asians. I guess, you kind of grow up, you want to blend in, you want to fit in as much as possible. And when you have these other representations of people who look like you, but don't act like you, don't speak like you, don't speak like anyone else, and they're just, you know, I hate to think that way, and I hate that I did think that way, and that I was not prouder to be Asian growing up, but I really wasn't. I was not proud at all. And yeah, BB was definitely everything I avoided about Asian everything. And I would just, whenever I would be like, let's say in line and in a store, like behind someone, you know, an Asian person like with broken English and whatever, I would feel so uncomfortable and so embarrassed. Like I never wanted attention drawn to myself in any way, specifically around race. And yeah, then I don't know. So anyway, that's like a total side thing, but yeah, super triggering. And she's Chinese, and it comes out one day that she's looking for her daughter, and Mia is very empathetic to this. She has her own kind of secret about her own daughter, Pearl. So she works for Elena. She's helping put stuff together for this adopted baby girl who's Chinese, and ends up putting it together. Like the timing is kind of right, you know, and you know, the baby's about the age that BB's baby is. So she does a little bit of research, finds out it is the one, it's the same baby. And gosh, like, yeah, so I mean, that's like all I'm gonna like really say about the storyline. But what I will say is, like, from an adoptee perspective, this was really kind of hard to watch. It was really like so thought-provoking, and so I could see it from all sides. Being an adoptee, thinking about this little baby girl who was, you know, not taken from her birth mother. Her birth mother did give her up. She like left her on this fire department's doorstep, and like out of love though. So she was like, I guess, new to the country. You know, she didn't speak English very well. She didn't have a lot of money, and was suffering from like postpartum depression, and was all alone. Like there was nobody around to help her, and she couldn't get the baby to, you know, to nurse, and like, you know, she was probably failing to thrive and all that kind of stuff. And there's even this one scene, and this was really, it was like this small, like minimal, like nominal change amount, like change for a dollar amount. And it was just showing the difference between being white in America and looking a certain part, speaking a certain way, and how you're excused for different things. So in this instance, it was literally like, you know, one of Elena's daughters was in a store getting something and was short like 68 cents or whatever like the amount was. And the lady at the cashier was like, "Oh, don't worry about it, honey," kind of thing. And she like let her go on with whatever it was that she was buying. And they show flashbacks to BB when she was struggling with this newborn and couldn't get her to nurse from her, and, you know, was trying to feed her baby. Like the baby was crying constantly, was just hungry, and she's trying to buy this formula from like from a store, has short that same amount, you know, like obviously for theatrical purposes. And it showed, you know, her English is very broken. She is clearly immigrant. The woman was like, "Well, come back when you have it," kind of thing, and like took the formula, you know, like away from her. But yeah, back to like adoption related. There's this, you know, once it all comes out, like this is the baby, this is the birth mother, this is the adoptive parents, like this is the story. And, you know, there's 3 parties to that story. It's a very complicated situation. And, you know, being adopted myself, my parents are white as well, same as, you know, in this story. And the baby had already been with those parents for like a year, or like almost a year. And like having biological children of my own, like carrying them and delivering them, and like, it's so complicated. Like I even asked my husband, because he, you know, we watched it together, and he had actually read the book as well. I asked him, like, so if this was, you know, whose side are you on? Like, if you had to choose a side, would you take the birth mother's side? Like, knowing she was alone, had postpartum depression, was doing the best she could with a newborn, and, you know, like the mom just needed a little bit of help, or the adopted parents, you know, they're kind of innocent in all of this. Like, they didn't know the baby's backstory. They didn't know what the situation was, but they know that they obtained custody and were adopted this child, and that, like, to them, that's their child, and, like, end of story, right? And his initial, like, gut reaction was, well, probably the birth mother, she was not well, she needed help, she's, it's her child, and like, that was his, like, gut reaction, which is what I wanted. And honestly, I don't even know, like so I ask him and I make him choose, but, like, I don't even know. So, and then I was like, well, like, what if this was like me and, like, my story, and, like, those were my parents in the courtroom fighting to keep their child, or and then the birth parent comes out of nowhere. Like, it's not that simple, right? So, and then he was like, yeah, he's like, yeah, true, I guess, then maybe your parents, like, maybe I would side with the adoptive parents. So it's like, it's so complex. And I think, being adopted, like, knowing the love that adoptive parents have for their children, and also, being a mother and having biological children. And obviously the birth mother, like, Bibi, did not want to give up her child. She thought it was truly in that child's best interest. She couldn't afford to feed her. The baby wasn't, like, breastfeeding. Just the courtroom, like, battle of sorts was, I think it was really well done. I think it was really emotional, and I could picture, like, the same thing playing out. Like, if it was any Asian baby, if, like, that same scenario, like, the arguments were so on point. Bibi's attorney is Asian male, so some of his arguments, and she's like, how are you going to raise Mirabelle and link her to her Chinese roots and her cultural identity in that way? And like, they had answers, that they were gonna do this or that, and you can't blame the adoptive parents at all, and I don't blame them for this. Like, and I think, like, if, like, putting my family in that situation, if I were picturing my parents put on a stand, fighting to keep their adopted children who were of a different race than them, a different cultural background, like, how would they have responded to that? And I can guarantee pretty much the same. Like, I think that adoptive parents are gonna do the best they can. And I think that it's really hard. And I think you just don't know what to do. Yeah, the adoptive parents, like, I felt for them on the stand. Like, I know that the plot's supposed to be, like, you should feel for Bibi, because, like, I don't know. Like, obviously they did an excellent job of making the viewer not really know whose side you should be on. And the casting was spot on. And if you're, in my age range, like, Joshua Jackson was from Dawson's Creek, and now to see him, like, playing this type of role, Joshua Jackson's character was a supporting character, yes, but really well done and really well cast. And the kids in there were phenomenal. Like, there were, like, 5 teenage kids playing these roles, because you have Mia's daughter and then the 4 of Elena's children, and actually one of their boyfriends too, who's black, and that's a whole other racial, conversation to be had. But anyway, really good. Cast was superb. Elena's family at the dinner table discussing this case is so black and white to them. Like, it's clearly the adoptive parents' right. They've had her for a year. The birth mother gave her up. It doesn't matter why. It doesn't matter the circumstances. Like, it was just very black and white. Like I said, like, I don't even know how I feel, like, about it. Like I said, I can identify with both sides. So, birth parents, I'm a birth parent myself. I can't imagine that kind of decision. I can't imagine being put in that decision where I felt like I had no other choice. And then adoptive parent side, like, I'm not an adoptive parent, but I think about my parents and what that would have been like, and how traumatic that is for all the parties involved, basically. So this was a really well done series overall. So if you have no ties to adoption, I think that the issues are as complex for the average viewer, but being an adoptee, probably being an adoptive parent for sure, would definitely trigger some thoughts and some deeper thinking on the dilemma and, like, how it's not black and white. I hope everyone's doing well. Subscribe if you like this kind of stuff, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.